First and foremost, I just want to say thank you to everybody that's able to join. I think today's going to be a phenomenal discussion. And again, I encourage you to be engaged and involved and invested in this process. We have an amazing guest, Justin Goldman, who is the Goalie Guild. I'm sure that you guys are all aware who he is, what he does, but give you a little rundown. He was a co-author on some pretty awesome books, and I know that we push them onto you guys to read, to look, to explore. You know, The Power Within, Embracing the Grind, Between Two Worlds are just a few to name. There's also things on his website, thegoalieguild.com, some things that we participate in, which one I'm really proud of and happy to help is the scholarship fund, which I think is great. And Justin does so many things, not just in the rink and on the ice, but just in general, good for the community. Another project that he's working on is Lift the Mask. And I'm super excited to kind of go through his knowledge and involve you guys in this process as best as we can. Before we get to Justin, I know Mitch, you just finished up a nice little hand-eye session. So why don't you give us a little bit of rundown of how that went?
Yeah, it went. I thought it went really well. Got a couple of guys in here who were in on it, so I hope they enjoyed it. You know, with me and Matt, and Justin, obviously, we've known each other virtually for years. We finally got to meet last year in person. I'm always looking to try to come up with some more creative things, especially in times like this. Throwing a ball against the wall gets boring after a while, so I'm really trying to go a little outside the box and come up with some different things. So we went for about 40 minutes with some various drills, and I think it's going to be something definitely to build on. We'll be doing it again next week. But I thought it went well. Rhino in-house did a great job of demoing. Patrick crushed the last concentration drill, though. I mean, he lapped everybody. So and Jacob Aranda, the Hershey guys, represented really well in those drills. So next week should be a good one. Already have some good ideas in mind.
Well, that's great. Well, why don't we pass it off to Justin? Why don't you give us a little bit of rundown and a story of who you are and what where you're from and everything else along those lines, and then we'll pass it off to you to start your presentation.
Yeah, sure. First of all, thanks for having me. I really appreciate it. It's really fun for me to connect with different goalie development and goalie training programs. And, I've known you guys for a number of years. We have the good friendship with the scholarship for training for your summer camp. And then, like Mitch said, finally got to meet him last summer in Boston. Matt, you and I have not met, but, we've got we're in the e-bug fraternity. So yeah, I'm here in Colorado. I'm one of the 5 emergency backup goalies for the Colorado Avalanche. I just finished my 3rd season, carrying that role for the Avs here in Denver. And just like Matt said, I have a very non-traditional hockey background. I grew up on a horse ranch in Texas and didn't even start skating until I was 13 years old. And that was the same year that the Minnesota North Stars relocated to Dallas. So most of the kids on this call probably weren't alive when that happened, but that's how I got introduced to hockey. I was definitely, a late bloomer, skill-wise and in terms of getting introduced to the game, but I had this extreme passion for learning, and that's really been the kind of the driving force behind my entire career. I've been in, very, very lucky, especially, considering I grew up in Texas, to have these opportunities to be involved in pro hockey for the last 15 years. And I've worn a lot of different hats, from scouting with USA Hockey to, writing for NHL.com, doing broadcasting here in Denver for the Colorado Avalanche for 6 seasons. And through my pretty wild journey, like Matt said, the books that I've written is really not necessarily me preaching a certain knowledge base. It's me learning from professional goaltenders and then sharing what I'm learning from them with the goalie community. And that's really the foundation for the books that I wrote. Again, I know some of the goalies in here are younger, but maybe you've seen them before, and I'll kind of preface that during my presentation. So that's it. Just got a passion for stopping pucks and learning every single day, and that's part of the journey. And some of the things that I've learned from pro goalies is even those guys at the best. I see Patrick's got this awesome, looks like a fat head of Jonathan Quick behind him. Johnny Quick, guy just loves to learn. All the best goalies in the world love to learn every single day. Doesn't matter how talented they are. So I will go ahead and share my screen, and we will get started. Okay, can you guys see okay?
Oh yeah.
All right, cool. So for this presentation, I wanted to put something together for you guys that was different from some of the other presentations that I've given, and just kind of reflecting on where I was at, kind of at your guys' age. I was really just starting to understand what it meant to really be a goalie, and really started to move beyond my passion for stopping pucks and starting to understand what it took to, be committed to getting 1% better every single day. So what I wanted to do is just kind of highlight some of the lessons that I've learned from different NHL goaltenders, like I said, over the course of my professional career in the game. And one of the guys that I was really fortunate to learn from over the years was J.S. Jaguar. He's retired now, but some of you might remember, he's a legendary goalie in the sense that he had a very, very long career in the NHL. And he had a Conn Smythe run in 2006, I think, for the Anaheim Ducks, where he stood on his head throughout the whole playoffs. The Ducks lost, I think, in Game 6 or Game 7 of the Stanley Cup Finals, and he was still awarded the Conn Smythe as the playoff MVP. And then later on in his career, he ended up with the Avalanche. And again, I was lucky to kind of, connect with him a little bit off the ice and learn from him. And he's one of Francois Allaire's pupils, so he's definitely one of the pioneers of the, traditional Quebec butterfly position that still has a lot of relevance today. So real quickly, again, my name's Justin, founder and owner of the Goalie Guild. I work with USA Hockey in the Rocky Mountain District on goalie development there, emergency backup for the Avs, and I also work for another nonprofit foundation in Colorado called MindSpark Learning. Most notably, through everything that I've accomplished in my career, I'm most proud of the books. And like Matt talked about, it's something that I'm really fortunate to have the opportunity to interview these NHL goalies and then share their wisdom with all of you guys. And that's really what these books are all about. Maybe the most recognizable one is that one in the middle, The Power Within. That's been out for about 7 years now. And then Embracing the Grind came after it. And the one on the left is more geared towards goalie development for goalie coaches for my journey overseas. So we're going to focus on these two books in the middle and some of the lessons that came out of the interviews we had with NHL goaltenders. And kind of how I like to preface the lessons that I'm going to go through with you guys is really the key concept to the series that I wrote with Mike Valley. And before every interview we held with all these different NHL goalies and goalie coaches, we showed them this little diagram here on the left. And really what this is focused on is, what is the one common thread that all NHL goaltenders turn to when it comes to performing at their best, And what came out of it is this concept that in order to be at your best and in order to have success at the higher levels as a goaltender, you've got to have balance. And so this diagram that we designed came out of all the discussions that we had with the goalies. They all kind of pointed to this one thing in different ways by sharing their backgrounds, sharing stories of their journeys, the highs, the low points, the successes, the failures. And that's how we conceived this idea of the 3 pillars of elite goaltending. And as you can see, it's a combination or a balance of, your mind, which is your mental game, the body, which is, the physical skills and the physical, components of, being a high level athlete, and then the spirit. And your spirit is just that inner drive. It's that inner fire you have within yourself to always be pushing to learn new things and be the best goalie you can possibly be. But if you don't have that balance and you just focus primarily on your body, but you kind of leave your mental game behind and you're not really trying to find ways to motivate yourself, you're only going to go so far. And so throughout every professional goalie's career, like 95% of all the NHL goalies out there are going to agree that life balance is key to long-term success. And within that, it's this constant juggle every single day of trying to find that balance. It's not always going to be there. It's not always going to be something that's really easy to achieve. Goalies, every day is a part of that journey, and every day you're fighting and trying to work and find ways to have that balance. But when you have the balance, you know it because you're in that flow state and everything's clicking. You're reading pucks off of stick blades cleanly. You're happy. You're in a positive mood. Your body language is good. And all of these things kind of have to work together in order to be consistently good on a daily basis. So that's really one of the most important lessons that I've learned from all the different goalies out there, is that they're always trying to strive for balance. They're always trying to achieve, a really good, consistent approach with their routine that is strengthening their body, strengthening their mind, and strengthening that inner drive to be the best version of themselves. The second lesson that I wanted to share with you guys came from Ben Bishop. And Ben is, man, he's had quite a journey for himself as a guy who's, a monster of a human at 6'8". Everyone just thinks he's a product of his size. And yes, of course, the size, definitely gives him a little bit of an advantage. But one of the things that he had to learn for himself, and that he preaches, when he has discussions with guys like myself and with other goalies, is that skill is only going to take you so far. And size is a product of that. Size is only going to take you so far. So this quote that he had in Embracing the Grind, I thought was a really valuable lesson, and one that, again, it's not just him that preaches it, it's all goalies. It's, this idea that a lot of younger guys think they're ready because they have all the tools. And by the tools, he means, like the physical skills, the tangible skills, but that's only half the battle. And that kind of reinforces the first lesson about balance, is that you can't just rely solely on skill. It's only going to take you so far. You got to have a strong mental game. And even though, you goalies are a bit on the younger side, some of you might have only been playing for, a handful of years, it's never too early to start improving your mental skills. Okay. And that doesn't mean just like your ability to have confidence or, being able to bounce back after a goal allowed. It could be things like focus and concentration and visualization, all of these different tools that have to do with a sound mind. These are great skills to start developing right now, because you are going to need them. You are going to have that resiliency if you're going to strive to be an NHL goaltender. So this was another key lesson that I learned through my journey, and it definitely helped me because for many years when I was growing up, I never even thought about my mental game. I just went out and played. But then it started to catch up with me, and I started to realize how important it was to have that routine and have those visual those verbal cues and all the other different mental skills that go into goaltending. The third lesson I learned is not from one individual goalie, but it's from all the goalies that I've seen over the years. And that lesson is that everyone learns differently. And I think this is really important for younger goalies to understand, because it's really easy to get caught up in how well you perform compared to other goalies in your circle, whether it's, the goalie that is on your team, goalies in, the goalie doctor family. It's really important to understand that, hey, your learning curve is going to be different than the guy next to you or the girl next to you. And that's totally okay. If it takes you a little bit longer to master a certain skill, recoveries or tracking pucks or rebound control or activating your stick on low shots, there's nothing wrong with that. Okay. It is a long, long path to get to the top. And there are a lot of goalies in this picture that, they didn't master certain skills until they were in the league for 4 or 5 years, and they made up for it in other ways. Maybe they had, elite skating, but their tracking wasn't very good, or vice versa. And over time, they continue to work on their weaknesses and polish their strengths. And that learning curve is different for all of these guys. And maybe the one guy that had the biggest learning curve, but is still successful in the NHL today, maybe not so much this season, but overall in his career, it's this guy right here in the middle, Jimmy Howard with the red pads. Okay. Legitimately, when this photo was shot in 2017, he did not know how to use the reverse VH. It was completely foreign to him. And you're like, oh my gosh, how did he not even know how to reverse VH? And he's an NHL goalie. Well, he was able to adapt, and he thrived in other ways. Okay. But he came out to this camp in the summer in Madison, learned a new skill, integrated it that next season. It kept him in the league. Okay. Yeah. He had a pretty bad season with Detroit. They were not a good team this year, But the fact that he was able to still integrate a new skill, you know, around the age of 30 while still being a full-time NHL goalie is pretty amazing. But it just goes to show you that every goalie's learning curve is different, and there's nothing wrong with that. If it takes you a little bit of extra time, put in the time, continue to master those skills and continue to learn, and it's totally fine, okay? The fourth lesson, and this is I'm sure Matt and Mitch probably shaking their head. You know, yes, I can't see them right now, but this is a non-negotiable for 99% of goalie coaches out there. You've got to compete, okay? You've got to be able to compete. You've got to fight for every puck. And this quote from Nicholas Backstrom, longtime NHL goalie, said, being competitive for to do to not lose again. And I think that's really important because anyone can be angry at themselves, lose game or goal, okay? And yeah, it's okay to show, show that you're upset and showing into behind the scenes to make sure you don't make the same mistakes, or to make sure you are bouncing back from a weak performance or a subpar performance. So being competitive is more than just battling for pucks in practice and showing that you care. It's also the effort that you put in behind the scenes off the ice to make sure that you're learning from your mistakes and you're learning from the losses. Okay. And there's so much more to competing than just what we see on the surface and what we see you doing in the crease during practices and games. And this is a mindset. Okay. So this goes back to all the lessons beforehand that talk about the importance of balance and the importance of, developing your mental game. And this is a part of it. Having that competitive edge and knowing when to dial it up is really important for goalies. And you've got to be able to manage that within yourself. Okay. A coach should never have to tell you, hey, buddy, you got to work harder. Okay. Negotiable coaches. And with that lesson, this one's also another one that I think is really, really important for goalies to understand, is how to be kind to yourself. So there are a lot of physical and mental demands on goaltenders. Okay. And as you guys get older and the competition rises and, the talent around you gets better and better, you're going to figure that out firsthand. It's part of the journey. It's part of the process of becoming the best version of yourself. So it's also important to know that while compete and being the best version of yourself is a non-negotiable, and that's what we should always be striving for every day, there are times when you have to be kind to yourself. And I thought this was summarized perfectly by Pekka Rinne when he says, when you play a lot of games and there's a lot of pressure and stress, you have to be kind to yourself. You have to know when to be in game mode and when you can be relaxed. And I think the sooner you realize that, the easier it gets. So again, this is all part of that daily process that goalies go through where they're trying to find that balance between game mode and being a little bit relaxed, dialing it up and knowing when to dial it back, knowing when to put in the extra time on the ice and when your body needs a little bit of rest, knowing when to go approach a coach about an issue that you're having and knowing when to try and figure it out for yourself. So this is that daily process, that daily journey of refining who you are as an athlete, refining who you are as a person. And again, just always trying to find ways to get 1% better. And then the last one before we kind of shift gears here, and this is one I just learned this year, or maybe over the past couple of years, is just the importance of our visual acuity system, our vision, our ability to track pucks. And same as like my relationship with J.S. Jaguar, I'm really lucky here in Colorado to have the opportunity to get to know the Avs goalies a little bit. And I'm amazed with this guy right here, Pavel Francis. He's probably the smallest goalie in the NHL. He reminds me a lot of Jonas Enroth. I don't know if you guys remember Jonas Enroth used to play for Buffalo and LA. Now he's playing overseas. Like tiny guy, but plays huge. And his visual skills are amazing. He's not a big guy, so he has to make up for it in other ways. And how he does that is how he tracks pucks and how he squares himself up and fills space. And he had this amazing quote this year that I absolutely love. I'm going to be using it for years now because I think it's so relevant to what all NHL goalies deal with. At that level, they're not afraid of stopping the puck. If they see it, they're going to stop it 99.9% of the time. What they fear is not seeing pucks, not seeing the release, trying to manage traffic, trying to work around bodies and still see trajectories and puck angles and stuff like that. And so this has become a really important lesson. And I think, Mitch is a walking example of this because he does so many creative drills to dial in your eye-hand coordination and to develop that visual intelligence. And so I really want to challenge you goalies, and I do this with all my guys as well, as I challenge them to think beyond vision as just a physical skill. And I want you guys to start thinking about vision as a cognitive, as a mental skill. Okay, and I'm going to explain a little bit more of that. And then what we're going to do is in the chat room, I'm going to have you guys try and answer a couple of like brain games. Okay, we're going to go through a couple of brain games. You can answer in the chat room, and I can't actually see the chat room, so maybe Mitch and Coach Matt can help with that.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay,
we'll take care of that on your side.
Cool. So real quickly, just to actually give you guys a working definition of visual intelligence, just so that you guys understand it a little bit better, is this. So, regular vision, what does vision mean? Vision is like what your eyes see, okay? But visual intelligence is the idea that it's not just what your eyes see, but what your brain perceives when you are seeing things unfold on the ice. So the perception piece is how you process and actually analyze the information in front of you, okay? So vision training, like what we know of as vision training, which again, a lot of what Mitch does, and there's a lot of great programs out there, is going to focus on that physical act of seeing. But for you guys as goalies, the idea of visual intelligence aims to improve the way you read and react to the game. So how you process and analyze that information, reading stick plays, seeing who's coming off the bench during a line change, being able to look up at the clock and see how much time is left on a power play or a penalty kill. These are all different ways of flexing your visual intelligence skills. And so it's moving beyond just the idea of traditional, seeing what you see. I'm going to play this video really quick for a couple minutes just to kind of emphasize this. Let me see if I can get it to pull up. I might have to stop sharing here. Can you guys, can you see my YouTube?
We all know the world is in tremendous.
I can hear it, but we can't see it.
Okay, I think I just have to stop sharing and then reshare. Yeah, here we go.
Okay.
Can you guys see YouTube now?
Correct.
Yep.
Cool. All right.
Visual intelligence is the concept that we see more than we can process. And it's the idea of thinking about what we see, taking in the information, and what do we really need to live our lives more purposefully and do our jobs more effectively. I work across the professional spectrum. So I work with police officers and intelligence analysts and doctors and nurses and librarians. But what's interesting for me is that the 4 A's are applicable to all of them. And what they are is any new situation, any new problem, any new client, any new transaction, any new environment that you're in, you practice 4 A's. The first one is you assess your situation. What do I have in front of me? What information is here? I want people to go beyond the 4 corners of what they think they see. So this is what's in front of me, this is where I am. Ask someone. This is my situation, here's where I am, this is what I see. Is there something here I might be missing? Because by asking someone else, we realize that no two people see anything the same way. So, of course, that doesn't work all the time, but if you're in an office situation, if you're in a medical situation, and you have the opportunity to collaborate, you'll get the biggest picture of your assessment if you ask other people what they see as well. The second step is to analyze the information. That's where you break it down and you say, what's important? What do I need to prioritize? What's most important? And what don't I really have to worry about at all? I find that when you make a mental list in your head, okay, here's my situation, and you divide it into 2 categories, information I need, information I might need, and information I definitely don't need. And for the information that you definitely don't need, put it away. Because our brains are so cluttered with so much information that if you can, from the outset, get rid of some information, do it. But keep that middle category, information that you might need, because you might have to draw on it when you don't realize that it's important. It could become more important as the process goes on. And then the third A, I think, is actually the most important. It's how you articulate what you observe. Whether you send an email, whether you pick up the phone, whether you tell a colleague, whether you write it down, the idea of putting into words what your observations are is the most important, because I tell all my groups, I don't know why this is, but something gets lost from here to here to here. Our brains and our eyes see something, but when it comes to articulating those observations, whether it's poor choice of words or an inability to communicate effectively, there's a real loss that I'm trying to redress.
Okay, so I'm going to stop right there. And what I love about this video and Amy's book, you know, she has a book that's called Visual Intelligence, where a lot of this stuff stemmed from, is this concept that, you know, with our ability to, you know, read the game and read plays, which we know is extremely valuable and extremely important as goaltenders, it will only take you so far if you don't know how to communicate. And communication is one of those skills that I think is drastically becoming more and more important for goalies, because like Amy said in this video, it's one thing to be able to, you know, have good vision skills on the ice, but especially for goalies, we're kind of like quarterbacks in football. We have to be able to communicate with our defensemen to help make sure that we're as effective as possible as a defensive unit. Same thing when you're setting up pucks behind the net to help transition a breakout. These things are vitally important. Communication skills with your goalie coach, vitally important. And like she said, the three A's that we got to: assess, analyze, and articulate. And she mentioned the importance of articulation. And I think that's really, really important for young goalies to start to develop, is this ability to be able to have a good conversation with your goalie coach where you articulate what you experience. So when you're reviewing video, being able to explain what you saw from your perspective, which is very different from what a head coach is going to see on the bench, which is even more drastically different than what your parents might see in the stands, and even more different than what a scout might see, you know, in the press box. Everyone's got a different way of seeing things and experiencing different plays that happen on the ice. And it's really important to that learning curve and for your coach to be able to develop you more properly if you can articulate the experiences that you had, whether it's goals against, saves that you made, mistakes on passes or breakouts, whatever the case may be. So that's one of the other lessons that I'm starting to learn from NHL goalies, is that now that there is more time being spent breaking down videos, more time replaying, you know, reviewing our performances online and on video, your ability to communicate what you experienced and why you did the things that you did on certain saves is really important to that learning curve. And the more that your goalie coach understands where you come from, where you're coming from, and why you did certain things, the better that coaching process is going to be, and the better you're going to have that ability to take that feedback and continue to improve your skills. Okay. So with that being said, what we're going to do now is we're going to have a couple of challenges for you guys. So you can either, you know, shout out your answer in the chat room by unmuting yourself, or you can just put it in the actual text chat what you see. Okay. And the first one's really easy. And then I've got a few after that that gets a little bit tougher. Okay. So here's the very first one. Can you guys name the hidden person?
This might be a little bit harder than you think, because I might not know who that is. Oh, he's got it.
I know who it is. Yeah, that's true.
There we go. Answers coming in quickly.
Yes, that means school is working, or homeschooling's working.
Let me see if I can pull up the chat room. I hope I can.
Everyone's saying, everyone's jumping.
Everyone got Einstein.
Everyone got Einstein. Okay, pretty easy, right? Okay. But again, this is testing your visual intelligence. So it's not just what you see, but it's your ability to process the grainy picture and be able to spit out the answer fast enough. Okay. Next one. What do you guys see? Oh, sorry.
We've got 2 cows, 3 cows, 4 cows, 5 cows. We have ducks.
Ducks.
Ducks. I can see a duck there.
To be honest, Justin, I'm looking for the cow. I don't see a cow.
I see an upside down beaver.
Upside down beaver.
Yes.
I might see
Image
like
on the left.
a
I see an
bear.
upside down beaver.
Okay, so what's cool is that it sounds like most of the goalies see the cow. It is indeed a cow. And if we were in person, what I would do, and you know, coaches for you, if you guys want to try this sometime, what you have to do is the first person that sees the cow has to flex their articulation and articulate and be able to actually show where the cow is.
I love it.
Okay. So obviously it's a little bit tougher in person, but I still wanted to drop this challenge on you guys. I hear ducks, I hear cats. It's pretty wild, some of the variable answers that you get from this image. But yes, it is a cow. And then the next challenge is to be able to articulate where the cow actually is in space by having them, you know, verbally explain it. Okay. So I've got one more. This one's probably the toughest. And then after that, we've got one more video to share and I'm done. Okay. Real fast, what you're going to do on this next image, you have to find the one-eyed jack. Okay. There's a one-eyed jack in here. Who can find it first? And be honest.
Yeah.
Yeah, no cheaters.
Whoever says they find it first, let's unmute them, and then we'll force them to communicate exactly where it's at.
Yep. So you got to be able to articulate and communicate what you see when you see it.
I have found it, but I'm not going to play this one.
It's tricky.
Oh,
Jay Janney.
Jay's got it.
Let's
All right,
go,
so
Jay.
Jay, unmute yourself and then communicate where it is.
It's to the left, like directly center by the Jack of Hearts.
Okay, that's not very descriptive. Because there's a
Uh,
few of Jack of Hearts over there.
Articulate.
if you go directly center in the picture, it's a little bit to the left, and it's under a queen. It's like a couple. It's under a couple of cards.
Jay nailed
you
it.
can just see the black J, and then see the face. There's only one eye.
Okay, that's pretty good.
Not bad.
So for example, like, and that was great, man. That was great. Like, and you know, there's a whole bunch of different ways you can explain it. And this is where you have to be really articulate. So one example is you could say the king of spades, the two-eyed king of spades that's on top of the queen of hearts, underneath the queen of hearts, next to the jack of hearts is the one-eyed jack, right? So you really got to think a little bit and be able to articulate. And I thought you did an awesome job of that. So that's a good example of being able to explain and communicate clearly to people that may not be seeing what you're seeing. And this is really important when it comes to maybe not so much with a goalie coach, because a goalie coach, you know, understands the language. They've got the experience, you know, understanding what goalies see. But let's say for a head coach who maybe doesn't have any goaltending background or any goaltending experience, it becomes really important to be able to articulate what you experience. And the same thing goes for your defensemen, for guys on your team. They don't really know goalie lingo. But if you want to have good cohesion with your line mates or your teammates, being able to articulate what you're seeing and how guys need to maybe space themselves out on a face-off, or how your defenseman is positioning himself on an odd man rush. This is where communication becomes vitally, vitally important. And so again, it's going to help develop leadership skills. It's going to help you understand decision making. It's going to do a whole lot of good for your game as a whole, beyond just stopping the puck. Okay. So last one, and this is the most fun because this is actually very goalie specific. Okay. what we're going to do is we're going to watch 5 or 6 shots or 5 or 6 goals from Austin Matthews from last season, okay? And what you're going to do is you're going to be challenged to answer as quickly as possible whether the shot is going short side or far side, okay? Pretty straightforward. And this one you're probably going to want to drop in the chat room. So let's do it. I'm going to have to do the same thing. I'm going to have to stop share and reshare. Let's see. Okay, you guys got it?
Yep.
Okay, here we go.
Here we go. Does he go short side or far side? Short side or far side? The Deception of Matthews. Play along at home. October 11th, Detroit.
He is going short.
Short side or far side?
And again, let me preface it that the gentleman that said something doesn't necessarily know if that's the right answer.
Right. They're playing, the broadcasters are playing along as well.
All right, so we got some answers in the chat.
Okay. I'll wait a few more seconds.
So we got 1, 2, 3, 4. We got 4 for far side. We got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We got 6 for short side.
Okay, so pretty split. All right. And again, this is tough. I mean, goalie players at the NHL level are super, super deceptive.
Side.
Yeah, it's nice to blink there going short side.
Yep.
That's one for Kelly. Nice
You know
job.
what? I thought he kind of opened up his body.
Okay, April 2nd, Buffalo.
This looks like he's going far.
Short side or far side?
Far, far, short, far, 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 short, far. One is jumping in the chat, which is awesome. We got short side from Jacob.
Okay, so pretty split again, right?
Yep.
Okay, good.
Side. His body isn't quite as open. Oh, wait. Okay.
All right,
open
1 and
there.
1. October 3rd this year, season opener.
All right. I think he's going to drive.
Ooh. Is this against Carey Price?
Yep.
Oh,
Opening night of last season.
what an iconic goal, though.
Short side or far side?
I remember this one vividly here. So we got some answers for far, short, again, split almost right down the middle here.
Pretty split. Yeah, this is pretty consistent with, you know, I do these every summer at all the different goalie camps I go to, and it's always really split down the middle. Here we go.
I think
Drag this in, so I'm going to say far side again.
Nice job, Kel. One more for the victory. There's 2 left.
All right.
October
This is
14th,
fun. This is hard.
2017.
This one, you know, I think.
All right. What do we got here, gentlemen and ladies? Throw it in there. Couple fars, couple shorts. More short side right now. All
Pretty
right.
evenly split.
Yeah.
Even split.
I think I'm going to cheat because I do remember this one. I think he went far side, didn't he? If my memory serves me correctly, yep.
Yes.
Okay, that's the only one that I had a bit of an idea.
October 6th, 2016, the second game.
Okay, he seems to be opened up again. I'm going to go short side.
I'm just gonna let this one roll.
Nice job.
Okay, so
Kelly.
you know why I found that really hard actually?
Nice
is
job.
because I'm seeing it from a different angle than a goalie would. A goalie would see dead on, and so your eyes would see it differently than this. I did have just a couple little clues though.
So I was playing along quietly,
Yes.
but I was pretty much on, and it's the left skate that opens up on the short side. Now, you don't buy that, do you?
I don't, only because a goalie doesn't have time to look at the feet. I know, Ron, you've told me Jacques Plante did that, which blew me away because I've never heard of a goalie looking at the guy's skates. But, you know, if you do have a quick glance, maybe it would tell you something.
He uses a really short stick, Austin Matthews, and he likes to have his hands close together on the stick. And I wondered if there would be an indication where he went
Right.
down on the shaft, but good job.
Okay, really cool exercise because again, the idea of this is that everyone sees things differently. Okay, everyone sees the game a little bit differently, and it's our goal as goaltenders to be able to assess what we see and articulate it so that we can help our defensemen get out of the way, right? And make the right decisions and know when to slide on shots and things like that. So a lot of the goals at the NHL level are not goalies being beat clean. That rarely happens. Clear-sighted shot, save percentage is what, 98%? It's the ones that get barely deflected off a defenseman's stick blade, or you've got wildly talented guys that are super deceptive with their releases. And this is something that all NHL goalies struggle with. So this is why visual intelligence for me is the next step in vision training, is working your brain and being able to articulate what you see so that you can explain it, so that you can help your goalie coach make you better. And that's good for all kinds of things. Video review. Hey, coach is going to get down on you, not goalie coach, but head coach is going to get on you for what he calls a bad goal. But from his angle on the bench, he has no clue that got slightly deflected or that puck was rolling or flopping or whatever the case may be. You got to be able to articulate and communicate and explain it to your head coach the right way so that he or she can try and understand. Okay.
Justin, if you don't mind me jumping in after that presentation, I mean, first, Mitch, thank you for reaching out to Justin and coordinating this, because that was excellent. There's so many points in that presentation that are just so spot on, not just for hockey, but just for life. I mean, the one thing that you talked about, which I think was awesome, and again, I want to highlight Mitch, is that communication aspect. And one of the main reasons of why Mitch started and is working with the Goalie Doctor Junior Mentor Program is for that exact reason, right? We have to be able to communicate. And, you know, when you're doing something, you might think that you know, but until you have to teach it or coach it, you don't know really how to get it out of you to communicate to somebody else. So that's a huge added bonus. And I think that ties in exactly what Justin was talking about. But just overall, a summary, you know, the lessons that he brought up, yes, we're talking about goaltending and we're talking about hockey, but those are consistent in every aspect of your life. You know, balance in life is so very important. Your skills are only going to get you so far. There's other aspects that you have to make sure that you're working on and developing. You know, learning, always stay learning and understanding that you learn differently than maybe your peers, but don't get frustrated. Just find a solution. Competing is so very important. I think, you know, a lot of aspects of our life, we're put in a position where we don't have to compete. But for the most successful people and everybody that you get to cross paths that are successful are very competitive. I think that's a huge point to emphasize. Be kind to yourself. Another lesson, we all have to be kind to ourselves, especially in the world that we're living in right now. It can be challenging emotionally, living in this world, being away from the rink, you know, outside of school, that sometimes we are always striving for perfection. But there's things that are sometimes out of our control, and we have to be able to be understanding with that and be realistic. You know, the last piece, the visual intelligence, I think that is the biggest piece that has to do with goaltending, the hardest hitting piece. You know, that little video that you had there with the 3 A's that we got through, I was kind of curious. What is the fourth A? Because I like the first three, if you don't mind telling me that.
You know what? I'd have to go back and play it. I don't remember off the top of my head what the fourth one is. I'm trying to think. It's another A, obviously. I think it's, gosh, I wish I should have played that video through. I've got the book right here. I'll grab it real quick just in case anyone's interested. So here's the book. It's literally called Visual Intelligence by Amy Herman. So it's a great book. I mean, again, I think this is next level vision training, is really understanding how the brain processes information. And again, a lot of the stuff that Mitch does is doing it, but goalies don't even know it, which is great because it's masked as fun.
Exactly.
But it's definitely training your perceptual abilities and your cognitive abilities, and that we call it cognitive flexibility, just being able to read different patterns in the game. And I'm sure you talk about it with your goalies, like goaltending is pattern recognition at the core of it. Like you talk about goalies like Marty Brodeur late in his career. Let's look at Henrik Lundqvist right now. Yeah, they're not the fastest guys. Their reaction speed slowing down, but their ability to decipher patterns in the game allows them to be in the right spot, even though they're a little bit slower than maybe they were, in the prime of their career. So that's, Roberto Luongo was the same way, right? Like clearly wasn't the fastest or the best skater near the tail end of his career, but he had that mental library of every type of shot release from every player in the league. They do the pre-scouting, they break down the video, they know the tendencies of the shooters, and that's a big part of why they have success, late into their 30s.
For sure. I mean, the game is only so complicated, and everybody practices together as a team to have structure. So the teams that you're either playing for or playing against are able to work together as a cohesive unit. So you get used to seeing the 3-on-2s, 2-on-1s, breakouts, net drives, and everything else sort of kind of becomes a pattern. So the faster that you can identify that, the easier it is for you to understand what you have to do to make those saves.
Right.
The one point that you brought up was there's things that we can train our eyes or test our eyes that maybe aren't as focused on the goaltending side. One thing that popped into my mind was when I was younger, I used to go to the dentist office, and they had this magazine, which was pretty much like a seek and find or spot the difference. And I used to love those things. And I really think that helped me. I mean, perfect example was that jack exercise, find the one-eyed jack, of finding small details and identifying them. And then the point that you brought up about having the ability to communicate that is just taking that to that next progression. Mitch, you got so many different cool toys that, with your research and your finding and your experience, one of the things that jumps into my mind is the letter chart, 1 to 100. And we go from 1 trying to find those letters in that maze or the vision chart where it's letters and trying to find that, or the ball that moves around. There's so many different ways that you can test yourself. And again, one piece that Justin brought up was everybody learns differently. So the best piece is to expose yourself to as many things as you can while you're younger. And then you can refine how you learn to make sure that you're providing as much attention on the right pieces. And again, we all have different strengths and different weaknesses. It's easier to train our strengths. It's more challenging and takes a lot more discipline to train your weaknesses. But as you're going through, self-reflection is important, understanding what you're good at and what you're not good at. Again, lesson number 2, your skills, which are the things that you're good at, are only going to take you so far. So you have to make sure, just like Justin said, you're going to refine and polish those weaknesses as well.
Right.
Before we go any farther, again, Justin, I just want to say thank you. I think that was an awesome presentation. Hopefully the kids got a lot out of it. I love the fact that, it was easy to understand. It's focused on goaltending, but it has a much bigger resonating message to things that are outside of the rink.
Yeah, for sure. Oh, by the way, the 4th A is adapt.
Oh, I love
which
it.
is like goaltending in a nutshell, right? Especially right now, we've got to find ways to adapt to our environment and continue to get 1% better every day, which is one of my main mottos. And being able to adapt is a huge part of that. And again, you guys do such a good job of that with Mitch's program and everything that you're doing, like having sessions like these. There's a lot of goalie coaches and a lot of goalies that are just sitting around right now. And this is important to keep the learning going, and you pick up a few things. And when you get back on the ice, it's amazing. Like for me too, like, hey, Matt, you and I are e-bugs, right? Like we've got to keep our skills sharp, even though we don't have the ability to get on the ice every day anymore. And for me, like how I adapt is by using VR. Like I'm using a VR headset to play some different games so that I can still get that full body workout, or at least get the feeling that I'm doing something that's going to keep me confident. So when I get back on the ice, it's not like, oh crap, I forgot what I'm doing here. It's like, I'm trying to narrow the gap between what I can't do on the ice and what I can do off the ice. And so that's, I think, part of that 4th A is like being able to adapt to your surroundings and still find ways to get better. Because there's some non-negotiables for me as a quote unquote coach, definitely not a formal goalie coach, but a little bit more of a mentor. And one of those non-negotiables is just not making excuses. And right now it's so easy to make excuses, and that's okay. Like, again, every day you're not going to be at your best. That is the reality of life as we know it, especially right now. So you want to be kind to yourself, but you've got to be able to know when you're making excuses. And when you try and start, when you start making those excuses, that's when bad habits start to creep in. But if you can just find ways, whether it's doing Mitch's stuff, whether it's attending a session like this, or it's messing around in VR, whatever the case may be, I'm trying not to make any excuses for just sitting around and being like, well, there's nothing I can do. Like, let's just hope I don't get that call someday. You know what I mean? So that's a big part of it too. And I'm glad I was able to pull out that 4th A to complete that series for you.
Well, I appreciate that. I mean, that's kind of a nice little point to bring up. I mean, at the end of the day, these kids are still in their prime of their careers. Me and Justin and Mitch, we have moved on from the mostly competitive side that we still have our toe in the pond a little bit. Justin and I having the ability to possibly get that call. And the last thing I know Justin or I want to do is when that call comes, which would be a dream for all of us, be not ready. So it's almost that uncertainty of, yes, I know I'm quote unquote retired and we've moved on, but there's still that little voice in the back of the head saying, hey, it might happen. It could happen. And that keeps the fire in my belly. And I love that little bet, and it's fun to be a part of. If you don't mind, Jacob brought up an additional question. Do you mind explaining just a little bit more in detail the VR thing that he saw on your Instagram?
Oh, yeah. Okay, which one was it? Because I posted one. Was it the video where I'm walking around myself? I think that's probably the one he's talking about. So kind of how I preface this is that VR is, I truly believe virtual reality and VR headsets is like the future for training off the ice. And part of that is because, again, the demands on professional athletes are really, really high. The difference between signing $1 million contract and not signing a contract at all is razor thin. So right now at the highest level, athletes are looking for any edge they can possibly get. A 1% edge can mean the difference between being a starter who plays 60 games and a backup who sparingly plays. So while these high-level athletes are looking for a new edge, virtual reality presents that edge. The problem with virtual reality right now is that it's so new that a lot of the programs that are out there, training programs that are out there are, let's just face it, they're bad, right? Like they're not anything that I would recommend for goalies to like, oh yeah, you should do this. This is definitely going to make you better. Like it's very, very new. It's very cutting edge. But there are a couple of programs out there that are showing some like a glimpse of like, oh, okay, you know, when this gets refined and it gets developed more in 4 or 5 years, wow, this is going to be legit. Like the technology is there, but it's so new that it's still considered emerging. So that video that I posted on my Instagram is an example of a game that I would never recommend as like a replacement for on-ice training, but there are some pieces to it that showcase what is possible in the future. And this game particularly, it's called Goalie Challenge Vr. Like when you play it, you're like, okay, this is really bad. It's not, like I said, it's nothing that's really gonna feel like you're actually stopping pucks. But they have this really cool feature where once you make a save in the game, you can push pause and then replay it, and you can actually walk around yourself in 360 degrees and see yourself from every single angle on a replay. And so that's the little clip that I shared. So it's just a glimpse of like, oh man, this is going to be awesome. Like 5 or 10 years from now, Matt's going to be coaching you guys. And instead of just watching a video on a computer screen, you'll be wearing a headset and you'll be able to walk around yourself in full simulated reality, seeing yourself from every single angle possible. You can look underneath, you can look above, you can look from the sides. And so that is just a glimpse of what's coming in the future for, you know, not just goalie training, but any athlete in any sport trying to accomplish any task. So pretty crazy what the future holds for VR training. Is it there yet? Not even close, but you know, there's definitely a couple of games that you can still kind of train your skills and do some of the stuff that Mitch does in a VR setting, and it's really cool. But clearly it's just the very, we're just kind of scratching the surface of what's possible in virtual reality for athletes.
Cool. Getting to a goalie specific question, Max has a question, and Justin, as far as I'm concerned, you're kind of the box control genie. You were kind of the first one I saw using the rope, which is awesome. He's got a question of when should we be using box control? Is it like a zone or a slot thing?
Oh, okay. So box control is like a concept. So box control exists all the time. No matter where the puck is on the ice, you control the size of the amount of net that's available behind you, depending on your depth and your squareness and your angle. So box control is a teaching tool that you can use at any time to help you better understand your angle, depth, and squareness, which is how I break down positioning. When we talk about positioning, it's where you decide to stand and set yourself up in relation to where the puck is. And we determine that by your angle, your depth, and your squareness, right? So if you're looking to improve your positioning or improve your coverage, you use box control as a teaching way, as a method of teaching and a method of better understanding and seeing how you fill space using different stances in relation to where the puck is on the ice. Does that make sense? So what I tell a lot of coaches is I would use box control 3 times a year. I would use it at the very beginning of the season, okay? And I would get video and photos from yourself in a bunch of different spots on the ice with the puck in different positions, doing different stances, whether you're RVH or you've got toes at the top of the crease or whatever situation you're trying to understand how to optimize your positioning. That's when I would use box control. So I like to use it at the beginning of the season and then at the midpoint of the season, just as kind of a refresher so that you understand how you're filling space in different situations. And then anytime that you feel like you're chasing the game or you feel small in the net or you feel like you're struggling with your positioning or you might be struggling with just overall confidence in the crease, I think box control is an unbelievable tool to help you visually see how big you actually are when the puck is in close to you. Okay? So it's not really necessarily like box control being used in specific situations. You can use it in any situation to help you understand your coverage better. And so in terms of when you can use it, you can use it anytime. It's a great tool. It's great to slow things down, to be able to discuss with your goalie coach, why you position yourself in different ways. It's great for talking about covering aerial angles with active hands. It's great to talk about, how deep or how far out you need to come out in different situations. It's not something you would do every week, but maybe again, like I said, beginning of the season, halfway point, and then anytime you feel like you're really struggling with, chasing plays or trying to, dial in your positional strategies, that's a great time to use box control.
Justin, I think that's a great point that you brought up. It's a teaching tool, and I think there's a lot of buzzwords that goalie coaches like to use, and that I think is one of them. And sometimes we do misuse it or misrepresent what it is. It's a teaching tool. It's about filling space, your spatial awareness, your presence in net. I was looking at your Twitter feed, and there's one thing that you just posted or retweeted from Cortex Goaltending, I believe. And if you guys have Twitter, I would say check out it. Obviously, the Goalie Guild, but there's also Cortex Goaltending, and he has some short animations of different things about being square or what the puck sees compared to your distance. And again, just like we reiterate, there's a lot of good resources out there. And just like you guys do in school when you're researching a paper, when something that's given to you as an assignment that you don't know, you should go through the same process with goaltending, right? Make sure you're doing your research, making sure that the information that you're taking in is credible and you understand it. It's not just having that simple, basic understanding, which most of us have, but again, making sure that you're taking that in visually and having the ability to articulate that to somebody else. If you're having trouble understanding something, try and explain it to your mom or your sister. Someone has no idea about hockey. if you can do that, it gives you a much clearer picture of what you're trying to accomplish.
Yep. Yeah, that's true for a lot of different concepts in goaltending. Like head trajectory is probably the biggest buzzword in goaltending right now. And terms get mangled. It's just the reality. Like I said, just like everyone sees things differently, everyone explains things differently as well. But the true, like the historical context of box control is that it is just a way to explain how much net you cover and how much net is actually available depending on where the puck is on the ice and how much, like, what your depth is. It's basically just angle, depth, and squareness, but a great way to teach it using the ropes that you've probably seen on a lot of our Goalie Guild stuff. And it's been around for a long time, but it's something that was popularized and mastered in Sweden about 20 years ago. And if you look at a lot of the Swedish goalies, why do they play so deep in their net? Why are they, quote unquote, considered blocking goalies? Well, they've all grown up with this concept and they've all worked on it religiously to the point that they have a really good understanding of how deep they can play because they know their coverage extremely well. And it's because they reinforce box control concepts, continuously. Whereas here in North America, it's still kind of considered a new thing, and not everyone is comfortable teaching it. A lot of people don't think there's any value in the ropes once you're over the age of 12. But I've done box control with guys at the pro level, and they love it because, again, it's really beneficial to see yourself and how much net you cover from the puck's perspective. So we're used to seeing everything from eye level, but the reality is you only got to cover what the puck sees, okay? What a shooter sees 6 feet high is completely different than what the puck sees, and every puck's got to come from the ice level unless someone's batting it out of midair, okay? And there's some other things to keep in mind too. Like, for example, we're using ropes to help visualize puck trajectory, but the reality is not every puck flies in a perfectly straight line. Pucks do all kinds of crazy things. The higher the level, and this is something I learned from the NHL guys, the higher the level and the more intense the game, the more wacky things pucks do. Pucks do all kinds of crazy things in the playoffs, and you see it sometimes. Like, I'll never forget goals on Pekka Rinne last year in the playoffs where, like, literally there's this much space and a puck is flying like this, and what does it do? Somehow magically it goes on its side and finds that space. It's like, it's weird how pucks do weird things in the playoffs that you just don't see in the regular season.
Do you remember? I can't remember how long ago this was, but there was a situation against Jonathan Quick, and it almost looked like there was a magical board behind him on the goal line where the puck was going this way, and all of a sudden it changed direction and didn't go in. So sometimes it's a double-edged sword. Sometimes it goes against you, and sometimes the hockey gods are on your side.
Yeah, and I mean, I always tell goalies, you can't cheat on angles, especially short side, because of Murphy's Law. Like, you think you've got everything covered and you cheat half a second, where's that puck going? As soon as, like, right where you cheated. You know what I mean? You drop your glove 2 inches because you think that puck's going low. Where's that puck going? Right where your glove was. And even at the NHL level, guys move out of the way. They've got angles covered, but they're trying to over-anticipate a release. And what ends up happening? Like, as soon as you start to cheat a little bit, that puck's going exactly where you were. You moved out of the way. So patience is a virtue, and patience is really, really tough to teach. It's a feel thing. It's an experience thing. And it's just trusting your edges, trusting your feet, and trusting that you're going to get down, seal the ice or whatever the case may be. You really got to have a lot of trust in yourself. And if there's one goalie I love to watch when it comes to patience and just trusting himself, it's Robin Leonard. Like, big dude, weighs a lot more than a lot of other NHL goalies, but his ability to read plays and read patterns and read releases, he doesn't look the most polished doing it, but that's because he knows he's not necessarily the most physically gifted athlete. He doesn't have the best reflexes, but, like, he's amazing at reading releases and being really patient on his edges. So,
a point to bring up also is shooters are getting smarter too. So you look at that one example with Matthews against Carey Price, which was the opener from, I think, 2 years ago. If he shot exactly where he started his release, I think Price would have been good. There's a screen in front, but you can see Matthews toe it in, bring it closer to his body, and change that release point, which changes the box, what the puck can see. So just like everything else, it's a great teaching tool. It visually gives you lines where you can learn from. You know, when I was younger, I was a great skater. But at the same time, sometimes I over-committed or over-pursued because I didn't have a very strong understanding of where that net was at behind me. As I gained experience, gained maturity, and a better understanding of where that 6x4 was behind me, I could play with more control and more poise, because I knew I didn't have to stop a puck if it was going wide. Why do I have to be in position there? Why waste extra energy? So it's a great teaching tool for you guys to have. And I'm super excited that we were able to have Justin on the call and discuss that. You know, before we let these guys go and move on, Mitch, do you have any questions that you want to propose to Justin?
No, you know, actually I do, Justin. I loved Between Two Worlds. And actually I made one of my quests is to meet as many of those guys in person as possible. I think I've met pretty much all of them. Of all of those coaches, who's the most memorable and has had the most influence on your career?
Well, the guy who's had the most influence on my career is Mike Valley, obviously. Like, he's the first guy that reached out to me. You know, I grew up in Dallas, so if it wasn't for the Stars, I'd probably still be roping cattle somewhere in Texas, right? So for me, when I was, you know, in my early 20s and I had just been starting to really make a name for myself, you know, I dealt with a lot of negativity. I dealt with a lot of people that were like, you're some dude from Texas. You never played anywhere. Who are you? Why are you talking about? Like, you don't know what you're talking about. And so I had to fight against a lot of negative, I don't want to call it negative press, but just like, I took a lot of risk putting my name out there on social media with no playing career. You know, like I barely played a few games in the ACHA 20 years ago. I really had to grind it out throughout my 20s just to gain, you know, an opportunity to write for NHL.com and stuff like that. But Mike was the first guy to see beyond that and realize that I had a good eye for the position and give me that vote of confidence when he called me and said, hey man, like, the scouting report on Kari Lettinen's awesome. Like, where did you play? Oh, you didn't really play. Well, that's cool, man. Just keep doing your thing. Like, you got something here, you know? So Mike Valley was the one that gave me that vote of confidence when I was really impressionable and really struggling with some of the negative stuff that I was dealing with. And then we went on to write these books together. But in terms of the actual book, Mitch Korn clearly, I think, is the guy. I mean, he's kind of just like Francois Allaire, American version, like one of the pioneers, one of the first NHL goalie U.S.-born American goalie coaches. He was cutting videos in the 80s before they even had video editing programs. The amount of time he put into his craft, his ability to have confidence in what he saw. You know, he's not a guy that played in the NHL. So this is a guy who's coached some of the best NHL goalies ever to play the game. Dominik Hasek, Pekka Rinne, Mike Dunham, the list goes on and on and on. And he never played pro hockey. So I gained so much inspiration from him, learning about his story and what he had to do just to establish himself and the risks that he took and the pursuit of knowledge that he had even to this day. The unorthodox stuff that he comes out with, medicine balls, all that different stuff. I mean, that guy is a living legend, and he makes everything he touches turns to gold. I don't know how he does it, but what I've learned about Mitch is that, again, it's not his X's and O's. He understands the game. His ability to motivate guys and really get to know them on a personal level is what makes him so good. Everyone wants to be the best for him because he's just that kind of a guy. He will hold you accountable. He will scream in your face. And again, we talk about non-negotiables for goalie coaches, one of those being compete. For him, it's just showing up. You know, like if you take a break, if you don't pay attention when he's giving direction, he will let you know and he will hold you accountable. And I think that's what makes him so great, is because it doesn't matter if you're 12-year-old or you're Braden Holtby, if you're not holding yourself accountable, he's going to give it to you. And he's not afraid to do that. So I think Mitch has probably been, in terms of the book, the most influential on me. And I know you guys know him fairly well and stuff. And I mean, he's a legend for sure.
That's awesome. I mean, and to be honest, I mean, I don't know if you know it, but I'll tell you that you were one of the biggest influences on me. You're one of the first people that I came to when I had the idea of the junior mentor program, and you're like, go for it. And we kind of had that same conversation. I didn't play till I was 38 years old. I didn't, this, and this. And you're like, if you want to, go for it. And then, Matt has been, great and let me run with it now, 4 years later. Here we are on Zoom chats.
Yeah. And I wish I learned these things when I was younger, because I kind of, same thing. Like, I picked up so much good stuff when I was already into my 30s that would have helped me when I was these kids' age. And it's tough, like it's hard to, not everything's going to stick. But if there's a couple of things that you can pull from these kind of conversations, trust me, you're going to be hearing them over and over again. The importance of balance, the importance of competing, the importance of communication. Like, you're going to hear it for another 20 years. So the sooner you can pick up on it now and find that inner drive to want to be good at it, it gives you such a leg up on the competition. So don't learn things the hard way. I learned things the hard way. It takes me a couple of times, like I'm stubborn, things like that. But like, if you can accept some of these things and really take it to heart and integrate some of them into your lifestyle and into the choices that you make as goaltenders, man, will it really help you when you get to be our age. So.
Well, I think the interesting part is all the goalies that are on the call that have worked with us probably hear some of the same things, same concepts, same points that we bring up and reinforce. So it's always great to have a quote unquote outsider, Justin, come in and reinforce those details. Justin, again, I just want to say thank you so much. I know that all the goalies on the call are really grateful to have you join us, be attainable and open to have conversations. Everybody that's on the call, if you haven't checked out Justin's stuff, I really highly encourage you to do so. Again, it's the Goalie Guild. I mean, there's tons, and I mean tons of information out there. If you haven't checked out the element table of goaltending, please do that. That is pretty cool. It gives you a lot of points of reference and details to learn. And again, just stay hungry. I mean, there's a lot of things that we discussed today in this Zoom call that I know are great points, not only for the hockey world, but for life in general. And again, we're doing this for you. So hopefully, we're trying to tell you or teach you things that we all wish we would have known earlier. So take it to heart, do your best. And again, just try every day to get 1% better. So everybody that's on the call, thank you. We're always grateful to have you. Justin, thank you so much for allocating your time and providing your wisdom. Mitch, you're always the man. Thank you so much for joining in as always. And we will see you guys again next Tuesday. Next Tuesday, we're going to have a former NCAA goaltender that has turned ref. He's actually reffing in the AHL. He was hopefully trying to get some games in the show this year, but with the COVID, that kind of put that on pause. But I think he'll provide a lot of great insight about his path and also his opinion and view from a different position. So I'm excited to have him come on the call next week. So again, thank you, everybody. Stay safe, stay healthy. Please, if you want, check out Justin online. If you need anything, reach out to us. We'll get you guys connected, but we'll see you guys all next week. Thanks,
Awesome.
everybody.
Matt, thanks for having me. I really appreciate it. Mitch, thanks for the kind words. Good luck,
Always.
goalies. And we'll see you next time.
Thanks, Justin.
All right.